Charlie Weis Jr. rebuffs another NFL team. We've got the latest. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. And thank you for watching weekdays on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Well, just when it seemed like things were starting to settle, LSU lands Jordan Seaton on Friday. They put a button on their record-setting transfer portal class, thinking, all right, little maybe vacation time, certainly a lot of high school recruiting going on right now before the February signing period. Lane Kiffin all over social media at every high school in New Orleans and all over the region as they're going on visits. And then Monday, a tweet pops up from Diana Rossini about LSU offensive coordinator Charlie Weis. And I'll read it to you briefly. This is Diana Rossini on Twitter at DM Rossini. LSU offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss Jr. spoke to the Philadelphia Eagles about their offensive coordinator vacancy, but informed the team he has chosen to remain with Lane Kiffin and the Tigers, per sources. So that's the second time now this NFL cycle that an NFL team has shown interest in Charlie Weis. I think the most important thing to note here is the end of that tweet where Diana Rossini notes that Charlie Weis is staying at LSU. So he told the Eagles, thanks, but no thanks. So that's the most important part of this conversation from an LSU perspective through the LSU lens. Now, I guess it's also important to note, we don't know if the Eagles offered the job, if it was an exploratory courtesy conversation, how deep the conversations went. Again, like what we know is exactly what Diana Rossini tweeted right there, which is very little other than they spoke, but he's staying at LSU. But remember, earlier in this NFL cycle, there were reports about the Giants being interested in Charlie Weis. And that one made a lot of sense because of Jackson Dart. The Giants invested a first-round pick in Dart, and Weis was Dart's OC at Ole Miss. So if you're the Giants, you're thinking, great, we made this giant pun not intended, but I do love a good pun. We made this large draft capital investment in a quarterback in round one. Let's try to maximize our quarterback by uniting him or reuniting him with his college OC, who's thought to be a rising star in football. That made a lot of sense why the Giants would be interested in Charlie Weis. The fact that the Philadelphia Eagles have now inquired speaks to a larger scale interest, in my opinion, in NFL circles for Charlie Weis Jr. Because it's one thing if it's the Giants, it's another where Weis has no connection to Philadelphia, the ownership, the head coach, the players on the roster, the quarterback. I mean, Jalen Hurts did spend, obviously part of his career at Alabama, and Charlie Weis. It is fair to mention Charlie Weis was an analyst at Ole Miss when at Alabama when Lane Kiffin was there in 2015, 2016 before he went on to follow Kiffin to FAU when Kiffin got that job. But all that to say, this is one of those things where the Eagles showing interest kind of validates Charlie Weis as a potential NFL target in this or future hiring cycles. One thing that I don't know, as I say often, we're continuing to learn this staff. Like we're learning Lane Kiffin, we're learning Charlie Weis. Weis is 32 years old. And I don't know his career ambition. And in a quick search, doesn't really reveal anything. He's a guy that, remember when his dad finished, the last time Charlie Weis Sr. coached was at Kansas. And so Charlie Weis Jr. graduated from Kansas and then joined Nick Saban's staff as an analyst, right? And then got a job at FAU with Lane Kiffin and then went to South Florida for 2 years, then joined Kiffin at Ole Miss and has been with him ever since, starting in 2022. So the last 4 seasons. So, I don't know what his ambition is. He's only 32 years old. Does he want to go? Does he have an NFL ambition? I mean, that was clearly Joe Brady's ambition. right? If we're talking about someone just comparable, a young offensive mind, that's sort of the wunderkind, right? Joe Brady didn't like to recruit. He wanted to be in the NFL. He took the Bills job, or he took the Panthers jobs now with the Bills, and likely going to stay there. I don't think that Brady has any interest in college. I don't know that we could say that for Charlie Weis. He's only coached in college. But remember, his dad was an NFL assistant starting with the Giants in 1990 all the way through that long tenure with the Patriots through 2004, won 4 Super Bowls in New England. I guess won 3 Super Bowls in New England, but 4 in total because the one he won with the Giants. But you're talking about a guy whose path has seen his father be both an NFL assistant and a college head coach at multiple stops. So what does Charlie Weis Jr. want? I don't. Only he can answer that question. But for right now, it's pretty clear. LSU made him the highest paid offensive coordinator in the SEC at $2.5 million per year. And he has a look-back clause in his contract where at the start of every year, they're going to look at the other OC salaries in the league. And if anyone passes him, he's going to become, again, the highest paid offensive coordinator in the SEC. So he's got a really good thing at LSU where he's making great money. He's going to be coaching great players, got great investment buy-in, all that stuff. But there could come a point where he wants to be an NFL offensive coordinator and make that his path. I just don't know, and I'm not sure that he does at this point either. Again, still early in his career. But here's the thing that I think is important to note. And this is why hiring a head coach with expertise on one side of the ball is so important. Because no matter what happens to your assistants, as long as the head coach is in place, you should always feel like that side of the ball is going to be taken care of. Like Nick Saban is the best example of this that I can give. Nick Saban had amazing defensive coordinators, guys that have gone on to do great things in their own right. I mean, Kirby Smart, probably chief among them, but Kevin Steele was Nick Saban's defensive coordinator at one point. Jeremy Pruitt became a head coach at Tennessee. Tosh Lupoy, who just became a head coach. Pete Golding, who's now the head coach at Ole Miss. The point is, Nick Saban had, even back at LSU with Will Muschamp, Nick Saban has had great, not good, great defensive coordinators, defensive minds, many of whom have gone on to become head coaches and do great things. But even when you had that turnover, the defense never lapsed at Alabama under Nick Saban because ultimately it's Nick Saban. And even if someone else is calling the defense on game day, you're still talking about strategy and implementation and game planning and all that revolves around Nick on his side of the ball. Well, it's the same thing here with Lane Kiffin. For example, I mentioned Charlie Weis was with Lane Kiffin for 2 years at FAU and then went to South Florida as the OC for 2 years and then left South Florida and rejoined Lane Kiffin where he's been since 2022. So the last 4 seasons at Ole Miss and now in Baton Rouge at LSU. The 2 years that Charlie Weis Jr. was not with Lane Kiffin, that was 2020 and 2021, Lane's first 2 years at Ole Miss. In 2020, without Charlie Weis, Ole Miss was 3rd in the country in total offense with 555 yards and 14th in scoring at 39.2 points per game without Charlie Weis. The next year, 2021, they were 6th in the country in total offense at 492 yards and 24th in scoring at 33.7. So all that to say, even without Charlie Weis, who again is outstanding, 2 things can be true at the same time. Charlie Weis can be an outstanding offensive coordinator, but even without him, the offense should still go because Lane Kiffin is in place. And I think that's what this illustration is. Yes, Charlie Weis showed in calling plays without Lane Kiffin in the playoff against Tulane, against Georgia, against Miami in those 3 playoff games, that he's more than competent and capable of calling an offense and game playing and all that sort of stuff. But it's not the linchpin that without him, you can't survive offensively. I think that here is the core of the key. So yes, Lane Kiffin valued Charlie Weis so much that he wanted to bring him, made him the highest paid offensive coordinator in the SEC, stipulations that can keep him the highest paid coordinator in the SEC, and it makes you better. It makes you better with him. That's undeniable. The other component of this is that even if you do lose Charlie Weis eventually to another opportunity, be it an NFL coordinator position, a college head coaching job, whatever it may be, that your offense should be fine as long as Lane Kiffin is in place. The other footnote that I should mention that we talked about back when the Giants were pursuing Charlie Weis is that if Charlie Weis were to leave for an NFL coordinator or head coach job, his buyout would be nullified. So the only way, or a college head coaching job, but the only way he would have that extreme buyout is if he left for a college OC job. But Weiss could leave for an NFL play calling job, and his buyout would be nullified. So he could leave penalty free for the NFL, for not for a position coach, but for a coordinator or head coach position. So something we'll continue to watch. But for now, Charlie Weiss says he is staying in Baton Rouge, excited about what they're building here, year one of the Kiffin era. Part of that, of course, is Jordan Seaton. So I do want to tell you what I learned on Monday about Seaton and his opportunity to enroll here for spring. So we'll get to that as we continue here. Don't you move. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. And you've got one more game to go. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, whether you're riding the underdog, or you're building your last same-game parlay, this is the game that everyone has been waiting for. Seahawks, Patriots, where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, just bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we're brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with local TurboTax experts in person, or you can connect online, and they handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms, and they work to get you every deduction. It is a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. I know there's a lot of cynics when we talk about things like this, but I do think it is worth mentioning. So Jordan Seaton committed to LSU on Friday and signed. But remember, the big question remained, because last week was the deadline to enroll in spring semester at LSU. So if you want to go through spring practice, you have to be enrolled in classes for the spring semester. Well, that deadline passed last week. And actually, as I was told, the roster was expected to be locked on Tuesday. Basically, the spring practice roster was supposed to be locked on Tuesday when that deadline passed. Well, the admissions made an exception for Prince Wilumon-Mielen last week because his transfer portal paperwork got held up by Ole Miss. So it was an extenuating circumstance. They made an exception, and Prince Wilumon-Mielen was allowed to enroll for the spring semester after he signed with LSU on Wednesday, just a day after that deadline. Well, Thursday passed into Friday, and Friday, of course, is when Jordan Seaton signed his paperwork with LSU. But the question remained about, would he be enrolled in school? I did ask someone very close to the LSU football program who would be aware of such things. Let's put it to you that way. Source very close. And I asked point blank, do we know if Seaton will be enrolled for spring since the deadline already passed? And this person said, yes, sir, he will be on campus this week. So the expectation, that was Monday morning, the expectation is that Jordan Seaton will be on campus this week. He will be enrolled in class, which means he will be eligible to go through spring practice with his new teammates at LSU, which of course is a benefit. But I want to reiterate something I said in a previous episode for our everydayers. You heard me say it. For me, I'm not super concerned about Jordan Seaton going through spring ball. Will it help? Terminology, new coaches, teammates, acclimation, yes, of course. You'd rather have him there than not have him. But I also don't necessarily think that it is imperative that Jordan Seaton go through spring practice. Now, it seems like he will. But this is a guy you've made a major financial investment, tons of resources to get him here, to get him signed. And he is the cherry on top of what is already an epic portal haul. What you really want for Jordan Seaton is to be ready to roll week 1 against Clemson. That's what you want. Having him for spring is an added bonus, and that's great. You really want your quarterbacks and receivers there in spring, right? Working on their timing. You really want guys who are going to be first-time starters to get those first-team reps in spring. Guys like DJ Pickett and PJ Woodland both played a ton. But for Pickett, replacing Mansour Delane, it'll be his first time as the starter as the boundary corner, right? Except for the one game against Western Kentucky where Delane didn't play. And then, of course, obviously the bowl game. But the point being, Pickett played a ton this past year, but being the starter, that matters. Those are the types of things where I think spring matters the most. But for LSU, as I was told Monday, they will have Jordan Seaton available and going through spring practice enrolled. And again, I know there's cynics, as we started, who would say, well, of course, they're going to get a 5-star enrolled. And okay. Would they make that exception for an everyday student that's not an athlete? I don't know. If there were extenuating circumstances, I'm sure they would consider that. But the everyday student isn't going through a dramatic speed dating recruitment at the end of a semester put in place by the NCAA and their calendar. That's the challenge herein. So an extenuating circumstance. But again, something else that I was told by someone within the program talked about how much alignment there is right now at LSU, from Lane Kiffin to Verge Osbury to Wade Roos, the president, to the university's, the board of supervisors, up to the governor, who we saw really lend an assist with getting Jordan Seaton. And one person told me, and I quote, when you have great alignment, you can move mountains. And I think that's one of the situations here with Seaton. From Lane Kiffin all the way up through, if an exception needs to be made to get this player into school, you make the exception. And clearly they did, they will. And Jordan Seaton will be enrolled and will be going through spring practice, as I was told on Monday. Broke that story over at LouisianaSports.net, where, of course, free resource. You can always get your LSU news info and insights there as well. And always right here on Locked on LSU. Okay, that's it for this bonus content. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. If you are on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.